All right, today we're digging into a massive and honestly, a surprisingly quiet trend that's happening in schools all over the world. Girls are, well, they're getting better grades.
Okay, so let's start with a question. When I say Finland's education system, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most people, it's that they're the gold standard, right? Like the best in the world, a model everyone wants to copy.
But what if I told you the answer is a lot more complicated than that? The real story behind Finland's success is, frankly, pretty surprising. So let's dive into Finland's education paradox. Yeah, it's a country famous for its world-class education. But as we're about to see, that shiny reputation is hiding something really interesting, a tale of two genders.
Okay, so how do we even compare countries like this? Well, the big one is the PISA test. You've probably heard of it. It stands for Program for International Student Assessment. Basically, it's this big global exam for 15-year-olds in reading, math, and science. Think of it like the Olympics for education. And yeah, Finland is almost always on the podium.
So how exactly does Finland get those amazing scores? Well, this is where the story really gets wild. Look at reading. A full 20% of Finnish girls are high achievers, scoring at the very top. But for boys, that number drops all the way down to 9%. I mean, that means girls are more than twice as likely to be at the top of the class.
Wow. And if you flip that around and look at the low achievers, the story gets even starker. The numbers just completely reverse. Suddenly, it's 20% of boys who are in that bottom group, compared to just 7% of girls. So boys are almost 3 times as likely to be among the lowest scoring students in reading. It's a huge difference.
So what does this all mean? Here's the kicker. Finland's incredible reputation is basically built on the performance of its girls. And get this, American boys actually score about the same as Finnish boys on that PISA reading test. The whole narrative of Finnish superiority, it's really a story about the huge gap between their boys and girls, a gap that's been hiding in plain sight.
But this isn't just a quirky thing about Finland. What's happening there is actually a window into a much bigger story. Because it turns out, this is a growing global trend. It's not just Finland.
I mean, look at this. Across the developed world, in what are called the OECD nations, the trend is just undeniable. On average, girls are about a full year ahead of boys when it comes to reading. And it gets crazier. Boys are 50% more likely to fail not just reading, but math and science too. This is getting so big that some countries are really starting to worry. Sweden's even talking about a pojkrisen, that means boy crisis. And in Australia, they've started creating special reading programs, like one called Boys, Blokes, Books, and Bites, just to try and catch boys up.
All right, so let's bring this conversation back home and do a deep dive into the US, because you guessed it, we see the exact same pattern here. And what's really shocking is just how early this gap starts to show up.
We're talking before kindergarten. At just 5 years old, there's a 14 percentage point gap where girls are more likely than boys to be considered school-ready. And to put that number in perspective, that gender gap is bigger than the readiness gap between wealthy and poor kids. It's also bigger than the gap between black and white kids. That's staggering. And this isn't something they grow out of. As kids get older, the gap actually widens. So in reading, what starts as a 6-point lead for girls in 4th grade blows up to an 11-point lead by the time they hit 8th grade. And what about math, you ask? Well, that old stereotype about boys being better at math, the small advantage they have in 4th grade, has pretty much vanished by 8th grade.
And this isn't just a fluke. A major study out of Stanford confirmed it. In pretty much every single school district in the United States, female students are outperforming male students in English language arts. And the size of that gap? It's huge. We're talking about 2/3 of a grade level. That's a bigger impact than most big, expensive educational programs ever have.
So by the time they get to high school, all these little differences have compounded into something really dramatic. Take a look at the top of the class, the top 10% based on GPA. 2/3 of those students are girls. Now flip it. Look at the bottom 10% of the class. It's the complete opposite. Nearly 2/3 of those students are boys.
You can really boil it all down to this one simple fact. Right now, the most common high school grade for a girl is an A, and for a boy, it's a B.
So, okay, why does any of this matter? Who cares if boys get B's and girls get A's? Well, it matters a lot, because these gaps have massive consequences later on, especially when we talk about maybe the single most important milestone in education, graduating from high school.
Just look at the numbers for on-time high school graduation. For girls, it's 88%. Pretty good. For boys, it's 82%. That 6-point gap is really significant.
In fact, it puts the graduation rate for boys as a whole on the same level as the rate for students from low-income families.
Now, you'd think a gap that big would be a huge red flag for policymakers, right? I mean, federal law is really clear that states have to report graduation rates for all sorts of different groups to make sure no one's being left behind.
They track everything: race, ethnicity, economic status, disability, English proficiency. It's a long list of really important groups. But based on everything we've just seen, what's missing? What's the one big thing they're not required to track?
Sex. Yep. Despite this huge, consistent gap in performance and graduation, states are not federally required to report how boys and girls are doing separately.
And this isn't just some weird trivia fact. It's a massive policy blind spot. Think about it. There's this big national push to get the high school graduation rate to 90%. Well, girls are almost there. They're at 88%. They're just 2 points away. But boys? They're way back at 82%, a full 8 points away from that target. We can't see how to solve a problem if we're not even required to measure it.
And all of this leaves us with one last big question. We spend a lot of time, and rightly so, talking about all sorts of achievement gaps in education. But if the gender gap is one of the widest, one of the most persistent, and affects literally half the student population, why is it one of the least discussed?